Houday, Bengal fans. He is Justin. He is Eric. Mon is about to be on. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. And there he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Mon Abul Hassan, joining us as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate everybody checking out the show tonight as we do the post-draft Bengals Pulse special. Again, as the dust settles, we are going to talk about each pick and what it means for this Bengals roster. Guys, real quick, before we get right into it, everybody, how does everybody feel? Just give me one word on how you feel about this Bengals draft, this 2024 Bengals draft. One word. Go.
Optimistic.
Okay. Eric?
Let Justin go first. I got a good word.
Justin?
Yeah, I think it's polarizing.
Ooh, wow. Good word. All right. Eric?
I'm going to take a page out of one of our UDFAs, Lombardi.
37-year-old quarterback.
All right, well let's get right into it because we want to cover all these picks this week, all 10. Maybe touch on a little bit of the undrafted free agents that the Bengals have signed, and then some news real quick about a couple of the roster guys that are already on the roster as well. But once again, Houday, everybody! Thank you guys so much for joining us here on a Sunday night again. The post-draft special. Guys, let's get right into it and talk about the two offensive linemen the Bengals have added to this roster. Obviously, in the first round with the 18th pick overall, they go Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle from Georgia. So they start the draft with an offensive lineman, and then they end the draft with an offensive lineman. Their second seventh-round pick goes to center Matt Lee from the University of Miami. And I'll throw in there my UCF Knights as well. All right, guys, let's talk about Mims first. And again, we talked about him. We talked about him a little bit, obviously, on the night he was drafted when we did that draft special. But let's talk a little bit about Amarius Mims and the type of player he is. Justin, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Tell us a little bit about Mims.
Justin, you hear us?
Justin, I think, has maybe frozen. Mom, why don't you go ahead and go? Oh, there he is. Justin. He's back.
Justin, tell us about Mims.
Tell us about Mims. Go ahead and get us started.
Yeah. So I would say the big thing about Mims is his size. I mean, he is a mammoth of a human being. I saw a lot of people making the comparison. He is a less refined version of the other guy we saw a lot of people connecting with the Bengals at 18, and that was J.C. Latham. Mims is more inexperienced, a little more raw, but the upside with him is much, much greater. So there is a real high risk, high reward aspect to that pick. I think looking at what he brings to the table, though, if he hits, if the development continues, if he can continue to build on his good play at Georgia from this past season, you're talking about a potential 10 to 12-year stalwart at a right tackle.
All right. Yeah. Mom, what do you think real quick about Mims?
You know, as I said the other night, I was really a Fautanu guy. I was hoping the Bengals would pick him. I liked his versatility, but I didn't lose any sleep over Mims being the selection. Justin hit it right on the head. He's such a big guy, 11-inch hands. The tape that he has, the limited tape that I was a little concerned about, is very good tape. And I believe, I think Pollock and I think this coaching staff is going to do a good job with him. He's got to stay healthy. He hasn't had major injuries. He did have the ankle issue, so just been nicked up a lot. But I believe the future is bright, and it was a position that we, pretty much had a good idea the Bengals were going to go. They're going to go offensive line or maybe defensive line. And I'm glad they picked him. I think his future is bright. Yeah, I wanted Fautanu. I admit that. But like I said, I'm glad Mims is on the team. Much needed position. The Bengals are better with him.
Well, he's only 21 years old, right? Again, only had 803 total snaps, which you guys both talked about. But again, with those 803 total snaps, about half of them were pass drops, did not give up a sack, only gave up 6 pressures. So, again, not a lot of film, and that was my big thing on him. However, the film that is out there for those 8 games, very impressive. And again, as mammoth of a man he is, like Justin said, he is an incredible athlete. At 6'7", 340 pounds, again, ran a 5.0740, over a 9-foot broad jump. And guys, he's got over a 7-foot wingspan. This guy is long and very athletic. So some things definitely that I'm sure Bengal fans are going to be very excited about. As Justin said, if this guy can stay healthy, he could be. I mean, he very well could be a 10 to 12 year staple on that Bengals offensive line. Let's go to Matt Lee, the Miami Hurricane center that was drafted there at the end of the 7th round. A guy who I knew for a couple years as he played for my alma mater at UCF. Let's talk a little bit about Matt Lee, Mon. I'm going to let you start with this one. What are your thoughts on Matt Lee?
Well, I was happy they picked him. I was a little stressed during the draft. I wanted interior offensive line help, and they waited until the 7th round. I was I thought they could have addressed that a lot sooner. Very athletic. His athletic score is through the roof. Second team All ACC. Transferred, like you said, from UCF to Miami. Started every game for him. Played very well. My only concern is he's not the biggest guy. He's 6'3", 300 pounds. Probably needs to get a little stronger. I think when it comes to offensive line, you got to have an NFL body. I think that's a big part of it. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I think he'll have some time to get stronger. But that athleticism, that's what that Bengal offensive line has been lacking. And getting somebody like him, I think, is a home run for the Bengals.
Yeah, and I agree with Taryn too. Taryn asked, why did he fall so far? Because again, guys, this guy, as far as PFF college grade, he was the highest graded center in this draft at an 82.7. The next guy, the Jackson Powers Johnson, at an 82.3. And then after that, it was the guys after that were a couple points lower. Justin, what do you think? I mean, this guy graded out at an 89.1 pass blocking grade, over almost a 75 run blocking grade. Justin, what are your thoughts on why Matt Lee dropped as far as he did? Because it seems to me that we're talking about the best center in this draft. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if he's the best center in this draft, but he was, personally, my favorite pick of all the Bengals picks. I think there's a very real chance you're talking about Matt Lee as your opening day starter at center by 2026. He, I think, will push Trey Hill out of a spot and compete right away to see some time on the field. He'll push some guys going into camp. And to answer Taryn's question, hard to say. I mean, he's really a one-position guy, whereas a lot of other interior linemen have the ability to kind of play guard or center. With his, I think he played at like 285, 290, although he did get to 301 for the combine.
Right.
So I think that was probably the biggest drawback with Lee, was just his lack of bulk. But 25 reps on the bench at the combine, great RAS score, and it got it done on the field at both UCF, and then when he hit the portal last year, was one of the top rated interior linemen in the portal, and ended up at Miami and continued to play at a high level. So yeah, again, that Lee is probably my favorite pick of the entire draft for the Bengals, and I think has a very real chance to be a future starter at center.
All right. Well, again, you talked about this RAS score. his athletic score was through the roof. We talked about Mims. This guy at 300 pounds ran a 5.03 40, almost a 5 flat 40 at 300 pounds. That is very athletic, gentlemen. Not to mention over a 9-foot broad jump. I mean, again, both of these offensive linemen, we see high RAS scores. We see youth, right? Mims at 21, Lee at 22, and we see incredible, again, just the massiveness of both these guys and the athletic ability that both of them bring to the table. Let's move on to the two defensive tackles that were drafted by the Bengals. Again, Mon was just beating on the table, trench, and he got 5 of the 10 in the trench. One of those trench guys comes at number 2. The Bengals go offensive tackle at 1. They go defensive tackle at 2. And that is Chris Jenkins, the son of Chris Jenkins Sr. that played so many years for the Carolina Panthers. Chris Jenkins from the University of Michigan. Again, another guy who had an incredible RAS score, a very just an incredible athlete. He comes in at 6'3", about 300 pounds. Justin, tell us your thoughts on Chris Jenkins, the Bengals' second overall pick, number 2 in this in the Bengals draft. What do you think?
Yeah, and one thing I did want to mention real quick, and going back to Mon's point about Fautanu, he's 24. Mims is only 21. So one other reason I really like the Mims pick over Fautanu, I thought ultimately you're getting a much younger player there on the.
Because Justin, we're hoping that we're going to get at least 2 years out of Trent Brown, right? I mean, I agreed with you. Yeah. Go ahead, Justin. Tell us about Chris Jenkins.
Yeah. So when you're talking about Chris Jenkins, his dad was an incredible player. We discussed him a few times during the mock drafts that we did. So certainly we've kind of covered him a bit, but you're talking about a really great run defender with high athleticism, with a high level of athleticism. He tested very well. So you're really hoping that he can continue to develop the pass rushing traits and give you that disruptor on the interior. But at the very least, you're getting one of the best run defenders in college football last year. And that was really one of Cincinnati's weak points. So he's probably not going to be a starter, but when you're in year 1, but when you're talking about defensive tackles, that one of the other big issues for the Bengals last year was the rotation, and their starters were taking up too many snaps. Now you get 2 draft picks that are going to help take some of the load off of the starters. And of course, with Rankins coming in and Hill, you're going to be able to take some of the load off them with those 2 rookies.
Yeah, great point. And like you said, I really think this is a guy who is going to be able to come in right away and fit into that rotation. Hey, Amber, sister-in-law Amber's joined us. Hooday, Amber, thank you for joining us. Mon, tell us a little bit about Chris Jenkins. What do you think about Chris Jenkins?
Justin hit it right on the head. Our defensive line really struggled last year, especially depth-wise. We've said it before. I guess when the starters did take a breather, the drop-off was huge. It just needed to get better in that room, and drafting 2 defensive tackles and an edge player, I think, is going to energize and help that room out quite a bit. He's 6'3", 300 pounds. He's good against the run. As Justin said, he's still developing as a pass rusher. His interviews on the website and Dan Horde and all the other local Cincinnati media, he seems like a great guy, very infectious. He's going to be great, a locker room presence, and I think the fans are just going to gravitate to him. He's going to be one hell of a football player, good rotational piece. He's going to come in, and he's like I said with the last pick, he makes the Bengals better. He's a safe pick. As Jeff Hobson said a couple weeks ago, we're always wanting to hit the home run. This guy's the double. Yeah, to me, he's the safest pick in the draft. We have some risky players. We're going to talk about them in a few minutes, some of their issues that brought them down on the draft boards. But to me, Jenkins is the safest pick in this 2024 draft.
Agree. And Wyatt, I am not saying that. I'm saying if Mims is not ready to start, hopefully Trent Brown is going to be with us for at least 2 years, and hopefully Mims is at that point developed enough to come in and fill in. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Chris Jenkins too, because again, I love what Taryn said here. He is polished. He is a vocal leader. I mean, you got to love. I don't know if you guys have watched all the video of him when he arrived in Cincinnati, but this guy is going to fit right into this football team, right into this defense. Very much a vocal a leader, which I love to see. This guy was a captain his senior year at Michigan, second team All-American. He was Michigan's co-defensive player of the year this past year. Guys, in 3 years, he racked up 113 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and you saw the one interception that Eric put up there that he almost returned for a touchdown. Obviously, the sack number's not high, but as Justin said, this is a guy who is known to stop the run. And for all of us Bengal fans out there that watched this defense last year, the Bengals defense gave up almost 160 yards on the ground. So to say that we have to go out and get all these pass rushers, we also have to go out and get run defenders, right? I mean, that's a big part of what we missed with this defense last year. Mon, am I right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, a lot of people, there's a big debate on Twitter over the weekend. The Bengals are drafting like it's 1997 because they're getting defensive tackles that are run stuffers. Well, I understand the NFL has changed, pass happy, these fast scat backs and everything. The Bengals gave up 160 yards on the ground last year. And what does that equate to? Time of possession problems. What happened in most of our losses last year? We had the ball for like 22 minutes on offense.
Yeah.
We got to get these guys off the field. And when teams are running it down our throat, that keeps Joe Burrow, keeps Jamar Chase. It's going to keep, all these other guys that we just drafted on the bench. And guess what? We can't score points when we're sitting on the bench. We need people to, stop the run, and it's part of complementary football.
To add to that, Mon, do you not think so? For however many years we were drafting to beat the Chiefs and beat the Bills, and you see what happened to us in last year in the division. You think this is the correction to get us back into AFC North football? Because AFC North football is still running the football. Even when the Ravens put it up, they do their best football when Lamar's running it and their running backs are running it. You think this is that correction to bring us back?
I do. I absolutely do. I think Paul Danner said it perfectly in his podcast. This was a draft to help us in the AFC North. Yes, the Bengals were built or have been constructed to run, go against the Pat Mahomes and the Josh Allens. We were 1-5 in the AFC North last year. It really could have been 0-6 because we played a Browns team that was resting all their starters. We got to compete better in our division. We were absolutely, Bengal fans, I'm not being negative. It's the truth. We were pummeled in the trenches. We were manhandled. And this is part of fixing the problem. 5 of the 10 draft picks went to the trenches. It was needed. And I think, the Joe Burrow situation, his injury, I think the Bengals offense is going to evolve. I saw a great Malik Wright mention today. Drew Sample is probably going to be the new H-back. He's going to be the new Patrick Ricard of this offense. I would love to see that. I would love it. And the Bengals drafted 2 tight ends. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I think the Bengals are shifting, and I think they're doing that because of what happened in the AFC North. Great question, Eric.
So
Yeah,
I know
agree.
Jake was staying in the position. Do you guys want to talk about McKinley Jackson then? I don't think you've touched on him yet.
Yeah, we're about
What does he
to.
bring to
We're
the
about to right now. Yeah, let's get to that. I want to talk about this, right, Mon?
Yeah.
Because as soon as the Bengals picked him, I got a text from Mon saying he's not going to hear the end of it. That's not true, Mon. That is not true. I'm not here to brag. However, I just want to make sure it's clear that in my final mock draft on the Bengals Pulse 5.0, I had drafted McKinley Jackson right at the same spot that he was actually drafted. And let's talk a little bit about McKinley Jackson, because this is a guy you really like too, Justin. A very obviously a bigger man, more of that nose tackle. And again, when you look at a guy like Sweat, Jackson was really that next guy as far as size and production at that position. let me throw this out here real quick, Justin, before you talk about him. Obviously, 6'2", 326, a big human being, 76 tackles, 11 and a half tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks in his career. Very productive for a nose tackle, Justin. Tell us a little bit about what you think about the Bengals' second, third-round pick in McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M.
Yeah, well, this is your DJ Reader replacement, and
Right.
Jackson has long been kind of connected with the Bengals, so this, like you said, this wasn't really a surprise. It was really about where is it going to happen in the draft, because we kind of felt like there was a really good chance this would transpire.
Yes.
But the thing about Jackson that I think is a little different than Reader is he does show that flash to get into the backfield and make plays. So even though he is your nose tackle, he is your one technique replacement for the loss of Reader. He does have some interior disruptive and a disruptive presence on the interior. I think the big thing, and they talked about it in the press conference, is he's gonna have to figure out how to be able to take on those double teams, because he's gonna see them, he's gonna get them, and he's gonna have to be able to handle them in Cincinnati. And that's really going to be the big thing. If he can do that, if he can develop that ability, this is going to be a really nice pick for the Bengals moving forward.
And again, too, as KP said, Jackson was a captain for 2 years. Both defensive tackles the Bengals drafted were both captains. I find that very interesting. We know how much our Bengals love to draft captains. Mon, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on McKinley Jackson, defensive tackle from Texas A&M. What do you think?
It was much needed. I thought he was drafted a little early, personally. But, a lot of the publications online, they were all over the place with him. Pro Football Network had him as a third rounder. Some of the others had him fifth and sixth. It's needed. We don't have that big body right now. I think he's going to come in, and I think he'll give the Bengals 10, 15, 20 snaps a game, a good rotational piece. And I think he's going to continue to evolve and develop. And I think he'll be a long-term player for the Bengals. I don't know if he's going to develop into one of these superstar starters, but he's going to come in. He's going to be a key rotational piece. And it was really needed. As I mentioned in my little rant a few minutes ago, our defensive line needed help, and he's a key piece that's going to come in and help.
Absolutely, I agree. Thanks for joining us, Anton Hude. All right, yeah, guys. I think both these defensive tackles are going to see playing time right away. They're going to be put right into the fire here in this defensive tackle room. You talked about it in the offseason. We could see 4 or 5 new defensive linemen in that room. And we added 2, maybe 3. We'll talk about the other guy here in a little bit. But this defensive line room is going to look a lot different. I love this pick of McKinley Jackson. I know some people thought it was a little bit early, but as Justin said, I love the penetration from this guy. As big as he is, he does create some havoc. He's not just some big slob that sits there and takes up double teams. He can actually move a little bit. So yeah, I love this pick, and we're gonna talk right now about the first third round pick. But I want to throw this out here, guys. The Bengals' first 3 picks of this draft, Mims, Jenkins, and the guy we're about to talk about, Burton, all 3 won national championships in their career. Again, another tidbit that the Bengals went out and looked for were guys not only at big programs that won big-time games and played in big-time games, but were productive. Let's talk about Jermaine Burton, the new wide receiver in the already stacked Bengal receiving room. Jermaine Burton, the receiver from Alabama. The Bengals absolutely love this guy. You saw after the pick, Zach Taylor went crazy banging on the table. He was extremely excited about Jermaine Burton. Again, another young guy, 22 years old, both defensive tackles, 22 years old. Again, we're seeing younger guys being drafted here by the Bengals. This guy played 2 years at Georgia, 2 years at Alabama. He racked up over 900 yards at Georgia, 53 receptions and 7 touchdowns. At Alabama, almost 1,500 yards, 79 receptions, 15 touchdowns overall, guys, in his college career. Almost 2,400 yards, 132 receptions, and 23 touchdowns. And guys, this is not only an incredibly athletic wide receiver, but a very productive one. Mon, why don't you start us on Jermaine Burton? Your thoughts on the receiver from Alabama, our first third-round pick. What do you think?
I was excited about it. I read a lot about him. We talked about him that night before he was drafted. I asked Justin about him because he was at Georgia and transferred to Alabama. He's an elite athlete. If it wasn't for his chirping and some of the other off-the-field issues, probably would have been drafted a lot higher. I think Joe Burrow is going to love him. You just mentioned a lot of his attributes. I mean, the guy has some wheels. Look at him. I mean, look at that clip right there. He makes that wide receiver room a lot better. Roshan, I think he's just there's no comparison between him and Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd doesn't have the speed of this guy, and
No.
Tyler Boyd's a little taller, obviously, but Tyler Boyd was a solid Bengal. This gentleman has, if he can fix all the other little issues, I think could be a really, really solid player. Watching his interviews and some of his, people were posting things on Twitter. He has a little bit of Eli Apple. Chirps a lot, talks a lot, and we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But he could be the steal of the draft, and he's one of those. He has a risky. He's a risky pick. We got to talk about some of those other little things, but talent wise, he's a second or late first round kind of talent.
What do you think, Justin? Tell us a little bit. You're an SEC guy, one of the biggest I know. What do you think about Jermaine Burton, the receiver that spent all 4 years in the SEC, all 4 with major programs? What do you think about Jermaine Burton, Justin?
Yeah, and actually, I didn't see anyone talk about it. He's actually a former high school teammate of Johnny Wilson as well. So,
interesting.
So Burton, when you're talking about talent, he was highly rated coming out of high school. He extremely productive. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's averaged 18 yards a catch over 4 seasons, 130 plus catches. So big play guy. I think in a lot of ways, he's got a lot of similar traits to Jamar in terms of, his build, size, strength, and then the deep play ability. I think he's going to mirror some of that. He's not as good as Jamar, let me be clear, but there are some very similar traits. Now, I think the big thing with Burton, and Nick Saban alluded to it on the telecast, because he loved the pick. You saw him clapping, but he said it. He's there. He basically said, "Hey, he's still got to grow up a little bit." And
maturity, right? Yeah.
Right. And sometimes with the wide receiver position, diva-ish behavior can kind of be one of the issues that you have to deal with. And there was obviously a very a incident that was written about quite a bit when Alabama lost up in Knoxville last year, ended a long winning streak against the Vols. There was an incident on the field with a fan, and you can get into the debate all day about whether or not players should be subjected to those types of incidents, but those are the types of things that are kind of following Burton around and what he's going to kind of have to overcome. So assuming that the off-field stuff clears and that he's, at least not a big headache for the Bengals, this is really a home run pick. I know, Jake, you were really hoping for a receiver at 18, or at least some sort of pass catching threat. Bowers, of course, you were talking about a lot as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
In terms of talent, Burton is right there with that run of receivers we saw at the end of the first round going into the second. You're talking about guys like Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey, who were guys we were hoping would be there for the Bengals in the second or third round. Keon Coleman, Leggett from South Carolina. He's right there with all those guys in terms of talent. But the Bengals were able to get him in round 3 at pick 80. So there is some risk involved here, but the upside is massive, and you're talking about a guy who, depending on what happens with T. Higgins, could maybe step in and be a wide receiver too in the not too distant future.
Good question by Taryn here. Good question by Taryn when you get done, Jake.
Okay. I just go ahead.
I got a point on that too. I mean, that all the character stuff, the Bengals did have him for a visit. They did talk to him at the combine, but I'd say this is probably the best possible situation for someone to come into who has those, possibilities of being a little bit too arrogant, a little bit letting it go to his head. He's coming into a room where he's going to be option 3 no matter what. He's coming into a room with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, a well-oiled machine with Troy Walters keeping those guys together. I'd say for a guy that has possible ego issues, this is the best possible situation for him to come into, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys share that feeling or not.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Eric, I was just about to say those exact words. Troy Walters, one of the best receiving coaches in the NFL. Troy Walters is going to get him right in line with where he needs to be. Again, you talk about a guy like Jamar Chase, who again had kind of that same knock of the maturity thing, and we see there was no issue there. Joe Burrow, obviously being the professional he is, I think Jermaine Burton is going to fit right in with this Bengal receiving room. Again, a lot of competition, the chirping. We got guys that do that. Jamar Chase does that all the time. I mean, he's going to fit right in. It's just a way to, there's a line there that you can't cross, and you talked about it, Justin. A lot of these draft experts talked about with Jermaine Burton, if that incident at Knoxville did not take place, a lot of these guys had him as the 4th best receiver in this draft, the 4th best behind the top 3. Jermaine Burton, again, a guy who, when you look at his athleticism, a 4'4" guy, an 11-foot broad jump, almost a 40-inch vertical. But I think more than all of that, and Mon, I love what you said. You really can't compare him to Tyler Boyd because this guy is a lot faster than Tyler Boyd. But this is what I love more than anything about him. In 2023, he had a 0% drop rate, guys. 0%. This guy's hands are almost 10 inches, and this guy does not drop anything. And a lot of his targets were on the boundary, which makes it even more impressive. I love this pick. Obviously, the maturity thing was an issue, but the Bengals feel comfortable about it. And if you hear Burton talk about it, guys, he took responsibility for it, which is a big part of that. And he talked about how football is his passion. It is his number one priority, and he wants to focus more on that. So, Justin, did you want to say something, Justin?
No, just the one thing I also like about Burton, his connection with TJ is very interesting, and yes. I'm hoping that kind of played into the comfort level that the Bengals had with him drafting him in the 3rd round.
Did we want to expand on Terrence's question there? So, where does it put Trent Irwin? Jermaine's obviously wide receiver number 3, and it kind of goes with Kinsey's question down here too, talking about Jamar playing in the slot. I could see Jamar playing a lot more in the slot, but I guess 1, how much do you think Jamar plays in the slot this year? And 2, does this put Irwin down to wide receiver 5?
I think they're going to move all those wide receivers around to get the best mismatches. Irwin makes the team. I don't think his roster spot's in jeopardy. The Bengals will keep 6 wide receivers, and he'll be one of the 6. Trenton Irwin has a role in this team. He's a backup punt returner. Joe Burrow likes him a lot. He's good for 20, 30 catches a year. He's going to be on the team. But Burton, you're right. They can move Chase around. They can move Higgins around. It's going to make the Bengals a lot more explosive, and glad he's on there.
And you hit it on the head, Mon. I mean, with Trent Irwin is not going anywhere because Joe Burrow loves him. Joe Burrow absolutely loves Trent Irwin. I think this probably bumps him to wide receiver 4, but he's still going to be one of the top 4 receivers on this team. Talking about Trent Irwin,
I think 5 or
and
6.
again, you said what?
I think Yoshi Voss will be wide receiver 4.
Well, that's who I'm counting as 4.
Okay.
I'm
I
counting
thought you
Yoshi.
said Irwin.
I said Irwin's 4. Oh, you're saying that Yoshi's going to be 4 over Irwin.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That should be interesting. I think Yoshi will be 5, but I mean 4 or 5, it doesn't matter. I mean, right? I mean, the most important thing is that Jermaine Burton is now going to be that number 3 guy that they can move around a little bit, and I love. You're right. You're right, Justin. I think the other part of this that we left out is that TJ Houshmandzadeh trains them. And it sounds like Zach Taylor spoke to TJ a lot about this young man's character. So, I think Trenton is still going to have a big role on this team because, again, it's Joe Burrow's team, and Joe Burrow loves Trenton Irwin. All right, guys, you want to move on to the tight ends? What do you think? Let's move on to the tight ends here because the Bengals took 2. They took 2 tight ends. Again, their first tight end that we're going to talk about, Mon, I'm going to give you the credit. Just like I take it, I'm going to give it to you. You talked about Eric All and how the Bengals loved Eric All. We talked about on this show, guys, how the Bengals and with Dan Pitcher now as the OC talking a lot more about the Bengals maybe lining up a lot more in 12 personnel instead of 11. And I think the Bengals kind of alluded to that with drafting 2 tight ends in this draft. Their first 4th-round pick goes to tight end Eric All from the University of Iowa. I read something, guys. The top 3 receiving tight ends, and this is from the majority of the GMs out there. The top 3 receiving tight ends went Bowers 1, Stover 2, Eric All 3. So you get a great receiving tight end with a lot of injury issues, though. Justin, why don't you talk a little bit about Eric All first, and then we'll go to Mon.
Yeah, so when you watch All on film, I mean, he is a very fluid athlete. He looks good running routes, and he's also a very willing blocker. I think the big issue there with him and why he was available in the 4th round, it might have even been a little bit of a reach there, was because of the injury history. And you're talking about a guy who's had back surgery, who's coming off an ACL tear. So there's definitely some injury concerns there. But I'm sure Cincinnati feels good enough about, the front office feels good enough about his medicals to make the pick there in the 4th round. There was a lot of discussion about Theo Johnson, and his measurables were through the roof. There was also Jared Wiley from TCU, was kind of the guy I was looking at. But when you watch Theo Johnson on film, the measurables that really blew everyone away at the combine, they aren't there. He's not he's not as explosive on film, on the field, and the inconsistency with him is definitely concerning. He should have been a more productive player. I don't think that's going to be the issue with All. As long as he can stay healthy, as long as he can stay on the field, there is kind of a feeling that this might be a top 3, top 4, top 5 tight end in this class, and the Bengals may have got themselves a steal here in the 4th with his selection.
Absolutely. At 6'5", 255, this guy is gigantic. Mon, obviously you liked Eric All. You knew the Bengals liked Eric All. Why don't you? I want to get your thoughts on Eric All, the first tight end drafted by the Bengals. What do you think?
I wanted Ben Sennett. Okay, that's the tight end I wanted. I knew the Bengals liked Eric All. I was reading it online, multiple websites had mentioned visits with him. That's why I said that the other day. I'm not that crazy about him, and I want to be wrong. My biggest concern is just the injuries. Okay, and when he was picked in the 4th round, we had McCormick available to guard. We had Bortolini the center. We had Jalen Wright the running back. I was wanting one of those 3 with the 4th round pick. I was really worried about the interior offensive line. I was hoping we could get maybe Eric All in the 5th round. But listen, he's on the team. Obviously, Michigan, he was a captain. The back injury, he had surgery on that. He says he's healthy. The knee injury, I'm more worried about the back issue than the knee. But if he's healthy, he's going to be one hell of a football player. And as
the
Taryn
back
said,
end. Oh, go ahead, Mom. Sorry.
no, as Taryn said, the tight end room is a little crowded right now. Yeah, and she definitely wanted Senate also. But it's listen. I want to be wrong here. It's my least favorite pick of the draft. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just there's a lot of variables with him, a lot of ifs. But I just wanted McCormick, sort of a draft crush, and Bortolini at that spot. That's what I was looking for because interior offensive line. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I think the Bengals ignored that in this draft.
Well, and to be fair about the Senate wasn't there, guys.
He was not.
Went.
He was not.
Senate,
You're right, but I
Senate
wanted
went.
him.
Yeah, the Commanders took him in the second round, right?
I was hoping he would drop. I was hoping he'd be a third rounder, but you're right.
Yeah,
he was my favorite tight end. You wanted Bowers. I wanted Senate.
And I like Senate too, but again, he wasn't there. And this guy, again, this is a boomer bust pick. There's no doubt. You talked about the back surgery, although it was minor and not very invasive. It's a herniated disc that was that surgically fixed. The torn ACL, obviously. Another interesting thing about this guy is he played a lot of special teams early on in his career. So maybe there was a little bit of that too, is a guy that's versatile with not only being a good pass catcher, but, with a special teams background. Eric, were you going to say something, but I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I was just going to bring up, I think it was Taryn that asked it, as we transition to the other tight end that we drafted. Is there room for two Tanners in this tight end room, or does this spell bad for our boy Tanner Hudson?
Well, let's talk about the other tight end drafted first before we get there. But that's a good question, and make sure that we get back to it because I do want to talk about that. We talked about that off air already. The Bengals' first 6th-round pick goes to another tight end. This tight end, Tanner McLaughlin. Again, I think a guy that a lot of people did not think was going to be dropping to the 6th round from Arizona. He is a little bit on the older side at 25 years old, guys. He played at Southern Utah and then transferred to Arizona. But in his 2 years at Arizona, he did break Mr. Gronkowski's receiving record or reception record at 79 receptions. So in 2 years at Arizona, 79 receptions, 984 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Ran a 4.61 40. This guy is very athletic. You can see the film here, him jumping over guys. Is this Gronk 2.0? Did the Bengals get a steal in the 6th round? Mon, what do you think? Is this a steal? Because I think it is.
Well, I'll say this. He's my favorite pick in the draft. 6'5", 240. Pro Football Focus mentioned that he had 45 catchable targets without a drop in 2023. He just looks fluid. I love what Daniel Jeremiah had to said during the draft. I respect him a lot. He had him as tight end 2 in this draft, and I think he had him number 68 on his big board, which is pretty impressive. Some of the other pundits didn't have him as high, but Daniel Jeremiah is pretty reputable. I think he's going to be a productive Bengal for years to come. It was a steal, good value pick in the 6th round to get him.
I love what Kinsey said. Make sure you put her comment up there. It's great, locked and loaded. Listen, I mean, again, you see the athleticism on this guy, Justin. I mean, he is very fluid. He catches the ball well. He's toe tapping. He's jumping over guys. You see him right there running the window route. I mean, running the screen here. I mean, is this a steal in the 6th round for the Bengals? What do you think?
Oh, it's definitely a steal, and I'm a big fan of this pick. I would say, I don't know if I want to start throwing out Gronk comparisons, but very similar.
Why not? Just do it. Just do it.
I think he's going to be a really nice receiving threat for the Bengals, and great production, very athletic. He didn't have a I would say elite RAS score, but talking about 4.61 40, 35-inch vert, 20 reps on the bench, 6'5", 245. He's going to be a really intriguing piece of the puzzle, and I think that was a very nice. That's not my favorite pick I still got Matt Lee, but he's definitely, I think, top 3. I think really when you look at what the Bengals did, they had great value in those final 4 picks in round 6 and 7. I thought they really did a great job of getting value out of those picks at the end of the draft.
I agree 110% with you, Justin. Let's talk about that other 6th round pick right now and go to the edge rusher the Bengals drafted with that second 6th round pick, Cedric Johnson from Ole Miss at 6'3", 265 pounds. You talk about a crazy RAS. If you're one of the fans of RAS, at a 9.28, this guy ran a 4.63 40, had almost a 40-inch vertical, 10-foot broad, with almost 10-inch hands. He's only 21 years old. So, again, a guy maybe that can come into that room, learn from Trey, learn from Sam, and really kind of be developed. Guys, real quick, he played 40 games in his career, Cedric Johnson, 111 tackles, 22 tackles for loss, 19 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 pass defense. Guys, this was a very productive defensive edge rusher. Justin, we finished with you last pick. I'm going to start with you this pick. What do you think about Cedric Johnson from Ole Miss? You're an SEC guy. Tell us about him.
So, yeah, he was a guy, he was a player coming out of high school who was projected more of an outside linebacker, sort of grew into becoming an edge. During his time at Mississippi, he had really pretty even production over those last 3 seasons with the Rebs. 22 tackles for loss, 19 sacks in his career. The big thing about him is going to be continued development, sort of building that array of pass rushing moves. He may only end up being, a sub-package pass rushing specialist, but when you're talking about a 6th rounder, I mean, that's great value. That's a guy with elite athletic traits there sitting in round 6. It's hard to go wrong with a pick like that. It's definitely it's not even a gamble at that point. You're just taking a chance on a guy that has the type of athleticism that could really pay off. But in a worst case, he's a situational pass rusher who gives you some reps in the rotation.
And you see his athleticism on film. I don't know if you guys are watching these highlights. That at one point he did a hook to curl drop. A linebacker dropped and broke the pass up. That's pretty hard to do from the edge position, Mom. What do you think about Cedric Johnson, the edge rusher?
I'm actually excited about him. A lot of people on Twitter think he's automatic practice squatter. Probably just that could happen. But as Justin mentioned, he is an athletic freak. Bruce Feldman comes out every year with a freak list of college prospects that are just elite athletes that have these unbelievable characteristics. He made the list. He's 6'3", 270, 11% body fat. Vertical jump, 36.5 inches. Broad jump, 10 feet. Bench press, 390 pounds, multiple times. Topped over 20 miles per hour on the GPS and did 6 pull-ups with a 70-pound belt attached. I mean, that's me material. That's like an athletic special. That's like me.
I heard this guy's been working out at Planet Fitness in Cocoa with me.
To
get prepared for the draft.
I was asked by the manager today not to come in for a week because I'm causing a spectacle there. No, but he's
not a good one, Mon. Not a good spectacle, I promise.
Jake,
you got to wear pants.
Football players work out there. Your football players work out there, and I've been giving them pointers.
They've told me. They've told me.
Question for everybody. We've got a crowded edge room. Do you think we can hide him on the practice squad? Do you think someone's going to try and snatch him away?
Well, I mean,
we keep 10. Guys, we keep 10 defensive linemen. We keep 10. So,
I mean, listen. I think this guy has a chance. Obviously, he's a 6th rounder, but we didn't get a lot of production from that edge position. So, I'm thinking right now that there's jobs up for grabs. I don't know what you guys think about it, but does he have a chance? Yeah, absolutely. Because again, that room did not do very well at. Well, obviously, we're taking Trey out of the picture, but the rest of that room did not do very well. And I think the real question is, there's a guy that's going to definitely be on the bubble that Mon has talked about, who on this team, we have been waiting for him to do something, and he hasn't done it. I think some guys' jobs are definitely on the bubble in that defensive line room. What do you guys think?
Oh, I 100%. Osai and Gunter better come to camp ready to compete, because this is the type of guy with his get off. In terms of upside, you know what you got with those two guys. If this guy comes in, if Johnson comes in and shows a little promise, you might have to consider rolling the dice with him.
Justin, you're going to like this. Taryn's going to like it. SEC people, when you play in the SEC, and he was productive, and he did very well against that elite competition. I mean, don't sleep on this guy. To me, he's the sleeper of the draft. He really is. Yeah. This guy has some major athletic skills to work with. He could be somebody, if you try to stash on the practice squad, that's going to get picked up. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how the summer plays out with him.
Yeah, and Chris said on here, Trey, Sam, Cam, Murphy, and Osai, who's he going to beat? I was referring to Osai. I think Osai is on the bubble. I really do. The guy has not been productive. He finished that 22 year off. He finished it off with a tough play there in the AFC Championship. But last year did not bounce back well, and really wasn't on the field very much, to be honest with you. So, yeah,
he had an ankle injury.
Yeah, well, and you have that, and the same thing with Gunter, right? You have an injury issue there as well. Those guys still have to be on the field, though, Mon. I mean, injury aside, they still got to be on the field, right? Let's go back real quick before we hit these last two picks, because I do want to get to Taryn's question, and you guys forgot to remind me to go back to it. Tight end room right now. Does both of these tight ends make it on this roster, or is T. Huddy going to beat one of these guys out? What do you guys think? I mean, how many are we keeping? If we're going to go to a lot more 12 personnel under center, are we going to go to 5 tight ends? What do you guys think?
I think. Go ahead, Justin. Who do you want to go?
No, I think it'll be 4.
Justin, go ahead. Go ahead, Justin.
I think it'll be 4 tight ends, and I think both draft picks have let's see what happens with All coming back off the ACL. If he's good to go, maybe he's a guy you stash on PUP for 6 weeks or something. Who knows? But I think it'll be 4 tight ends.
If I'm Johnny in Spaces, Johnny Bengals, a fireman in Cincinnati, brought up a really good point. Bengals could go light at running back, 3, have Sample be the H-back, and the next thing you know, you keep 4 tight ends, which you keep both Tanners. There's a lot of moving parts there that could happen. I don't know if that doesn't happen. I think Hudson will be the odd man out.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And again, obviously, like Justin said, it'd be interesting to see. Eric All says he's going to be ready for training camp, but it'll be interesting to see if he will be ready for training camp. All right, guys, let's move on to these last 2 picks. Both of them defensive backs. The first one, the 5th round pick, corner Josh Newton from TCU, 23 years old, guys. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds. He played at Louisiana Monroe for a couple years and then transferred to TCU. Guys, the numbers are good. I mean, 152 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 7 INTs. 4 of those INTs at TCU. He did have 1 return for a touchdown, but more than anything, guys, this guy had almost 40 pass breakups in his career as well. A 4.51 guy, which I know was kind of a knock on him, but this guy is a football player. I mean, maybe not very fast, but he is a football player. Justin, what do you think about Josh Newton?
Hold on one second. Eric, why the West Virginia highlights?
Well, because they're always on people's highlights.
Why the West Virginia highlights? I'm just curious. Okay.
I'll grab
Go
what
ahead.
comes up first, Mon. If
Go ahead,
you're welcome to cherry pick some and send them in. Otherwise, you got what you got.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah. So, yeah, Newton will be kind of an intriguing addition. It seemed like he took a little bit of a step back last year as TCU and in general took a step back off their national championship season. I actually don't have an issue with him so much. I kind of wish that the Bengals would have addressed corner a little earlier. But when they did decide to go to the position, he was as good as an option as there was remaining on the board. Yeah, I think he's going to be, potentially or, corner 3 on the outside this year, corner 3, maybe corner 4. Yeah, I mean, probably, to be honest, probably my least favorite pick of the draft, but yeah, he, I do wonder, I guess I just worry a little bit about, the last season where he kind of regressed a bit. So hopefully it seemed like coming into the 2023 season, you were talking about him as maybe, a top 50, top 75 draft pick. And
Yes.
the struggling a little bit, TCU struggling a little bit as well. And then not testing off, not having a great testing portion of the combine probably hurt his stock a little bit. So hopefully he proves to be a gamer and is a nice rotational piece. And corner was a bigger need than I think a lot of people wanted to admit for the Bengals. And so they did need to address it at some point in the draft. And Newton was a solid get.
Okay. Ma, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I just reading the Pro Football Focus profile, 58 college starts, 58. He's played a lot of football. Going into, he was more highly rated last year, and Justin is right. He had an uneven year this year. The one thing I like about him, though, is he does have, Taryn is right, he has unbelievable football IQ. I read 3 different publications, scouting grades on him. They all said the same thing. His football intelligence is off the charts. And his 4.51 speed, it's pedestrian. You want it to be a little faster for a cornerback. I know this is different positions. I'm not comparing. They're different players. But Vontaze Burfict wasn't the greatest athlete. His RAS score was poor, but his football smarts was off the charts, and it made him play faster. And I think maybe we're going to see that with Newton. He was rated the best cornerback in the Big 12. That's not saying much. Big 12 football, they score 60 points a game, but still, he had a productive college career. 58 starts in college. I mean, he's seasoned, and I loved his press conference with the Bengals. He's got a little bit of an attitude, and I like that. I like it, and I think he could potentially be our slot corner of the future. I think he could potentially take Jalen Davis' spot, maybe. Jake, you'd like that?
Justin.
No, I mean, I think he's a true boundary corner.
You do?
I think he'll fit there. I think with me, I was hoping in the 4th round when they ended up taking I believe TJ Tampa was still on the board there, and that would have been a really nice value pick for them at corner, which is probably why I'm a little sour on this one. But hopefully,
Valid.
the traits that made him so great in 2022 are there when he shows up for minicamp.
And guys, football speed is different than linear speed. That IQ, that high IQ for football can really help you play a lot faster than what your linear speed actually is. So, and as Baby said too, we haven't talked about Dax Hill yet, but Dax Hill now being moved to that corner room, as Zach Taylor said, maybe Justin, that was the Bengals thought going into this, because I agree, going into this, corner was definitely a position of need. Going to be interesting to see how Dax translates to that boundary corner. It sounds like that's where he's going to be. What do you think about that?
Well, the physical traits certainly would suggest he could play it, but he hasn't. He didn't do it at Michigan, so or at least not very much. So I I hope they find some sort of role for him. He's too athletic. He's too gifted for him to turn into a bust. But they got to find some sort of role where he can contribute. And if it's the nickel corner, if it's boundary corner, the nickel / slot corner, whatever, just find a spot to get him on the field, because he was too good at Michigan for him not to work out, and he's too athletic. There's got to be a way to find a role for him where he can get on the field and contribute.
This corner room is going to be one of the more interesting battles of training camp for sure. Because again, as 619 said, don't forget about DJ Ivey. I mean, he's still sitting there as well. I think Mark too just said, just for anybody interested, that Mekhi Becton has signed with I think the Eagles. Was it the Philadelphia Eagles? He just signed.
$5 million.
He was obviously a target of the Bengals early on in free agency. All right, let's get to this other 7th round pick.
Let me throw something in, Jake, real quick. I want to say something about Dax. I think Dax is going to see the field a lot.
Okay.
Quarterback 4 is 400 or 500 snaps a year. So Dax Hill is going to be on the field a lot, and I think the Bengals are doing this because they want him on the field. So it's a work in progress. I think he's too talented to sit on the bench.
Well, we talked about that, right? We don't really know. We talked about this during the draft. I had said, was Dax worth that 1st round pick? We haven't seen that yet, but maybe corner helps this guy's career. And again, too, I don't know who just said it on here. I read it just a minute ago, but Von Bell is going to make a huge difference with all of these guys. Having a guy back there that understands this defense, communicates the back end, CC, thank you, communicates the back end of this defense. That was a huge piece missing last year. But let's we got to get to the 7th round, our first 7th round pick, but the second straight player from Ole Miss that was drafted by the Bengals, obviously Cedric Johnson, the last pick of the 6th round from Ole Miss, and now we get Dijon Anthony from Ole Miss. This guy has played corner, safety, and nickel. He's very versatile. 6 foot, 195, ran a 5.5 40 again. Didn't break that 4.5 number, but again, can play a lot of different positions. Played at Liberty for a couple years before transferring to Ole Miss. At Ole Miss, guys, 61 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 INTs, 8 pass defense. What do you think about Dijon Anthony? Do you guys like this pick? Mon, what do you think?
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, no, I actually really like this pick. And with Hill sliding over to corner, I think he'll be in the mix. I think he'll battle Anderson for that last safety spot on the 53-man squad. He physically, there's nothing that really jumps out at you. He's average size. The RAS score was 6.62, which is good, but not elite, of course. You mentioned, I think he was like a 4.51 in the 40, 4.55, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 4.55,
and we just saw that hit on Jaden Daniels. This guy is a thumper. He is a thumper. He will come up and smack you in the mouth. But he also has some range, and he can also kind of play that center field spot as well, and like the versatility. So I'm a big fan of this pick. He's definitely a guy who I think is going to surprise, and he could be in the mix to be your, that last safety to make the team.
What do you think, Mon?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to come in. He's going to have to make a name for himself on special teams, but. He reminds me of Newton a little bit. Athletically, he's a 4.5 guy, but he has good tape. And he did transfer. We were joking last time, me and Justin, about the Bengals area scout must live in Oxford, Mississippi, because, hey, man, you don't have to travel far.
No.
And I think he's going to have to make a name for himself, obviously, on special teams. Justin is right. He's going to be battling Tyson Anderson potentially for that last spot. But what's not to like? There's a feel-good story about him, transferring around. He's definitely just a good kid, and he is intriguing. We'll see. It's like a lottery ticket. We'll see how it goes.
And the Bengals love his versatility. I'm sure guys. They love those guys. They can move around. I think he makes this roster just because of his versatility. And again, Tyson Anderson can't stay healthy. Another guy that we're talking about with injury issues that just cannot get on the field. And, at this level, you got to stay healthy. And I don't know. I like this pick too, Justin. I really do. I didn't know a lot about him when he was drafted, but all the research I've done here in the last day, I absolutely love this pick. I think he's going to make this roster. I really think he's got a chance to make it just because of, again, how thin the room is and how poorly that position was played last year with Dax moving out a corner. Going to be interesting to see. All right, guys, that is the 10 that we drafted. Now, one little tidbit thing, two tidbits I want to throw out here, guys. And before we talk real quick about the undrafted free agents, Daniel Jeremiah gave us 7 out of our 10 picks, guys, were in the top 150 prospects, with Mims being number 1. And so you had Mims, Jenkins, McLaughlin, Newton, Johnson, Jackson, and Burton all in Daniel Jeremiah's 150. Gridiron Grading gave the Bengals an A on this draft. Before we move to the undrafted free agents, guys, let's throw out a quick grade on the top 10 guys that we took in this draft. Mon, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I give him a B. And it could easily go up to an A. It takes 2 years to really see what's going on here. Some risky picks, or I shouldn't say risky picks, some picks with risks associated to them. You could say that about any draft pick, but still, I mean, Burton, with his chirping and off the field things, and Mims, not, some injury issues, nothing catastrophic, but not a lot of tape on him. The tape that we did have was good. It's a B right now. I think the Bengals are a better team. I love the trench. As I mentioned earlier, the 5 of the 10 picks were allocated to the trenches. It was needed. And I'm happy with it. I think they're a better team. I'll give it a solid B.
All right. Justin, what do you think?
So I think PFF gave us a B+, and I thought that was a pretty good grade. Just to kind of echo what Mon said, there's a lot of risk involved in, especially the first half of the draft, those top picks. Burton with off the field stuff. Even Nick Saban brought it up. You got your number 1 pick, Amarius Mims, who just hasn't played a lot. Will still have to develop. And then even you're talking about a premium pick in the 4th round, Eric All, who has a pretty sketchy injury history. Certainly, they definitely went higher risk with some of their picks, but as long as they felt good about where those guys were at and the issues, that the red flags that are there, that's the main thing. But yeah, I would say B+, just and nicking them a little bit on the grade just because of how risky some of the picks appear to be.
Can I add just one more thing? Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, right.
We know the Bengals medical staff is very conservative. And if they checked off on these players, I think they're going to be good to go.
I agree. I was going to say that too. I think we all know how conservative the Bengals are when it comes to injury-prone players. And Dottie D says that Burton never had off-field issues, just on-the-field issues.
Yeah, man.
Eric,
beating up those volunteer fans.
What do you think, Eric? Eric, what do you think? What's your grade?
If I can blame him.
I'm going to give. So I got a twofold grade. This is like the paper that you had in high school or college where it was an opinion piece, and you left school that day and the teacher gave you a B+ because you kind of had a little edgy opinion. You took some risks. You threw some things out there. And the teacher came back after the weekend after thinking about it and said, I kind of agree with you, and changed it to an A. So I think this is a B+. And after a year, maybe 2 years, we could easily say that this was an A, maybe even an A+. But for now, it's a B+. We took some swings for home runs, but we got to see if they pay off.
I'm going to go B+ too. I think B+ is a good grade. I'm going to go with Justin and PFF. Eric, you as well. I think B+ is a solid is a solid grade for this draft. I think they hit a lot of the holes they needed to hit. They obviously don't think running back is. Some of us thought that maybe they'd go running back. They did get a couple of undrafted guys, but besides that running back position, I mean, I'm looking at this as they filled a lot of the holes. And I know, Mon, you wanted some more interior offensive linemen, but I don't know. Maybe the Bengals feel better about their depth than some of us do. But I do think the Bengals filled a lot of holes. I think they got good value. I really liked Saturday. I thought Saturday was a great day. I know some people don't agree, but I thought Saturday was a great day for this Bengals team. So I give it a solid B+. And like you guys said, I'll reiterate it. This is a boom or bust draft. I mean, if these guys end up, staying healthy and staying on the field, this thing could easily be an A+ with the talent that they got. Obviously, the risk that comes with it. All right, guys, real quick, I'm going to go over the undrafted free agents. This is so far who I have seen from different Twitter page, and you have it on there as well, right, Eric?
So I have it up on the screen. Justin's got a lot of information on these guys.
We can't see it real good. Is there any way you can make it bigger?
I'm working on it.
All right, cool.
And Kinsey, we did talk about Matt Lee. We talked about him early in the show.
Yes, we did. Kinsey, we did it by position, Kinsey. So we hit Mims and Lee at the same time. All right, here we go. So again, 2 running backs, as I said before, Elijah Collins from Oklahoma State, Noah Cain from LSU. They did get a quarterback, Rocky Lombardi. What a great name, from Northern Illinois.
38-year-old quarterback.
Rocky and Lombardi, though. He's got both great names.
Got both. Yeah, his parents did him a solid there. 2 linebackers in Casey from Indiana, and is it Nye? How do you say that, Justin? Is it non-Jamaded Jetty? I don't know how
Aunt
you
Jemima.
say that. He's from Wisconsin.
Meta John Meta, I think, is what it is.
Meta John Meta from Wisconsin. Offensive tackle Eric Miller from Louisville. The punter. We did see a punter taken. And again, I know I was a big Tory Taylor guy. So was Justin. But I've read up on this Austin McNamara, and a lot of people said he's the best punter in this draft. I don't know. We'll see. From Texas Tech. A couple wide receivers in Burgess and Mosley. A corner, Robinson from Tulane. And then a couple safeties, Jules and Dow. And then another edge in Balzic from Wisconsin, Platteville. And then another tight end in Grandy, Illinois State. I don't know if I left anybody off, but what do you guys think about some of these guys real quick? Just hit on a couple of them. Let's start with the punter. Why not? What do you guys think about this punter?
I defer my time to Justin on this one. He's going to know more. And Eric, I'm sure you have the punter kicked against West Virginia, like an 87-yard punt.
Oh, you want me to find that for you?
Yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
I'll go look for that. Justin's got all the RAS information, so he's going to cover all these guys. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah. So McNamara was top. I think most outlets had him as a top 3 punter. So not having to spend another draft pick on a punter, I think, was a real positive, and get a guy who will definitely come in and compete. He will definitely compete to make this roster. He was definitely one of the best punters in the country last year. So right up there with Tory Taylor. So when you're looking at the undrafted free agents so far, a few that jump out: the 2 linebackers, Aaron Casey from Indiana. His RAS score wasn't that high; it was only a 4.32. But he tested better in the pro day setting. They probably had ran on a decline or something. I don't know, but he very, very productive at Indiana. And his testing numbers really weren't that bad, just not elite. I saw him a lot of analysts were looking at him as a potential round 6, round 7 candidate. So one of the top linebackers that was available, definitely good to get him. And John Ameta from Wisconsin, he was incredibly productive. I think I'm trying to look at some numbers. He had over his last 2 seasons with the Badgers 154 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. So extremely productive, but he tested extremely poorly. He ran like a 4.9 40. Just really didn't do well in the testing phase of the the run up to the draft. So he's a very productive college football player who just the athleticism wasn't there in the combine setting. But as an undrafted free agent, you can gamble a bit there. Let's see. The receiver that's really intriguing is going to be Cole Burgess out of SUNY Cortland. I think he was aiming to be potentially the first draft pick from Cortland since I think 1967. He was very productive, over 3,000 yards in college, and his testing was off the charts. He actually he had a higher RAS score than any of our draft picks. So 9.8. Wow. He ran a 4.45, 6'1.5", 192 pounds. So very athletic, very productive at the Division III level. 24 years old, so he's a little older. So he's definitely an intriguing back end of the roster, probably practice squad material. So of the group, he's probably the most interesting on offense. And one other guy I really liked was Michael Dow out of Miami of Ohio, who was 6 foot and 217, and he had a 902 RAS score. So
the safety, was that the safety?
Yes, he was the safety. So Jake, you mentioned that's a little bit of a position now with Dax Hill moving over a corner that's a little lean on bodies. That was a really nice signing in the undrafted free agent portion. I thought the Bengals did pretty good there. I think I would have liked to have seen them grab one of those Michigan offensive linemen that didn't get drafted. They had 2 that were borderline 6th, 7th round / UDFA type prospects that would have been nice on the interior. Because like Mon said, a guard somewhere, whether it be toward the end of the draft or in the undrafted free agent portion of things would have been nice. But overall, definitely some intriguing candidates from the group they've lined up so far.
You think any of these running backs, Justin, one of these 2 guys, these undrafted guys, you think they have a chance to possibly push for a roster spot? Kane from LSU and Collins from Oklahoma State. What do you think about those 2 guys?
Well, so Kane is a kind of an interesting player because he was a very highly touted guy coming out of high school, but did not. He went to Penn State, got kind of lost in a crowded room there, and then went to LSU, where he really didn't do a whole lot either. Collins is interesting in that, he's a 6-year guy. Stats weren't really crazy. He only had 142 yards rushing, but you're talking about 6 foot 220, and his RAS score I think was in the 8th. So, there's some intrigue there with the 2 running backs, but neither of them really strike me as a guy that's gonna push. I think any of the running backs currently projected to make the 53-man roster.
Mon, I want to finish the last question with you, Mon. Obviously, you were very upset about the interior offensive line, the depth that we have right now, and the Bengals not really going out and getting anybody. The only offensive lineman undrafted was an offensive tackle, Eric Miller from Louisville. I don't know very much about him. I don't know if he can translate. But you have Mims, you have Miller, and you have Lee, and that's it, Mon. What? Real quick, I want to get your thoughts on. We know you're not happy that the Bengals didn't do it, but why didn't they? Why didn't they go out and draft more interior offensive linemen? You have the answer for us?
I don't. I wish I did. Yeah, you remember last year they had so many tight ends they were looking at. The draft just didn't fall their way to get one of those tight ends. I think we saw this happen over the past weekend. I think there were just better players there. They didn't want to that they had on their board rated higher. They didn't want to go after that guard. A lot of people on Twitter, Taryn, Kenzie, a bunch of people, they keep on talking about Dalton Risner. Eric, you mentioned him quite a bit. He hasn't signed, if anybody. I think he wants to be a starter. Could that be a possibility? Come in for depth. I don't know. But, for years, the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm trying to pull it up here real quick. I forget some of their names. They have 16 players on their practice squad. And Nate Gillum is one of them. He's been on there for 2 years. There's a history of NFL players that have been on practice squads for years that develop into good pros. Do they believe in these guys? Are they developing? Could they be a future on the interior offensive line? We don't know. We'll see during camp. But, they do have bodies there. We'll see. I definitely wanted some fresh, maybe one true guard, somebody that could come in and potentially battle Volson and or replace Kappa down the road. But we'll see.
We'll see. I guess the Bengals think highly of Cody Ford because I think he'll be that swing guard now.
And the big question there, we've got Mims and we've got now Lee. So does that spell the Jackson Carman experiment and the Trey Hill experiment? Are those the two guys that are going to be out because they just signed Cody Ford? They really like him.
And Sharping's a guy that's still out there. The Bengals could bring back Sharping. They really liked him as well. I know he got he got a lot of PT last year. That's a good question. Is the Jackson Carman experience over? I don't think so. Unfortunately, I think he's a second-round pick, and the Bengals probably will give him another chance. What do you think about that,
Justin?
Go ahead, Justin.
I think right now you've got your starters. Cody Ford is obviously coming back. My guess is that Matt Lee knocks Trey Hill out of a spot, and then obviously Mims has got a spot as your swing tackle, and then it'll probably be between Deontay Smith and Jackson Carman for that number 9 spot. And it really, the ability to play inside and out. Yeah.
My opinion, they really need to lean on the fact that, he hasn't had bad tape out there for a few years because he hasn't played much. So let's start going out there and selling the fact that he was a second-round pick. Get somebody back like we did with Billy Price. These people have forgotten how bad he did play. Let's send him off while we can, and that's my opinion.
Yeah, I heard he's been training in Russia this offseason, man. Been doing
What was
push-ups.
it last year he was doing yoga
Working with
and eating
Ivan
Drago.
Yeah, he's been working with Mickey and all those guys.
A lot of montages going on.
Montage, you say?
Oh yeah. A lot of montages going on.
My Chewbacca. You see Chewbacca? Look at this.
Rocky
Which
movies.
one? The standing up or sitting down? I thought you were talking about the mustache.
Listen, guys. Rocky movies love montages. We're going to end with this. This is a very interesting, real quick, a little tidbit from Zach. He was asked about Trey Hendrickson trade request. This is what Zach said. He said, "You let Trey voice his concerns. I'm listening. I've got an open ear to him. I love Trey. I've told Trey that. We want Trey to play here next year for us. He's going to play here next year for us. He's going to have success, and we're going to have success, and I'm excited for that." So doesn't sound like Trey is going anywhere. I don't think any of us thought Trey was ever going anywhere, but Zach Taylor making it pretty clear that Trey Hendrickson is not going anywhere.
Well, I think with Trey, he watched a couple of guys who he outproduced get paid a bunch of money this offseason, and he's a little aggravated. And that's fair.
That's fair.
That's kind of where that's at. And hopefully whatever needs to be done to sort of, smooth that over happens, because he is a big part of, obviously he's the biggest part of the pass rush right now. He was almost the only part of the pass rush last year. So it's pretty imperative that he at least be happy enough to come back and do what he did last year again in 2024.
What he did last year with the lack of help, 17 and a half sacks. Everybody knew that the only consistent pass rusher we had was Trey Hendrickson, and he still found a way to get there. I think he had maybe 3-4 sacks called back due to holds or penalties or whatever. He could have had 20 easy, but Yeah, I cannot imagine a Bengal defense without Trey Hendrickson. I don't want to imagine that.
And he's
Yeah.
going to have a really good argument this next year because
he will.
he's going to have help on the other side. Sam Hubbard's going to be healthy. He's got these young guys that are going to be going in there, and we're finally going to have an interior presence. So this could be the year that he gets 20 sacks, 21 sacks, and then he has, let's renegotiate and throw it on the table next year.
And I think we'll all feel better too if Miles Murphy comes out and produces. Real quick, guys. T says Rocky 4 ? Real quick, best Rocky movie, Mon, go.
Rocky 2.
Wow, Rocky 2. Justin.
Oh, come on. Whatever one Mr. T was in.
Rocky 3. That was
Okay,
Rocky 3.
Rocky 3.
Eric.
Clubber Lang.
It's funny because Jay Morrison talked this last week, and he didn't think he'd saw Rocky 4, but he's like, oh, the one with the Russian. Yeah, that's the one. I don't know. It's hard. 1 and 2 are kind of just one long movie, so you got to go with 1 and 2. I mean, it's a whole story.
Creed was good. That's a Rocky movie. Creed was really good.
Rocky 4 is one of the best movies of all time. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well,
was Arnold Schwarzenegger in it? Was Arnold in it?
No, but he is the best actor of all time, Mon. And we're gonna have a Bengal Pulse show just on Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Listen,
how great he was.
Is a quantum physicist, so
yeah. You got Citizen Kane, Gone with the Wind, Rocky 4.
Rocky 4. Listen, 85 montages is one short of what it should have been with 86 Rocky 4. I mean, come on, guys. That was just a great movie. All right, guys, that's another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, go ahead, Eric.
Just before we get out of here, we've got over 560 people in here, and
Get to the
chopper. A lot of people commented on this earlier, but it's great to see all of our friends from Spaces joining us in here. We appreciate everybody coming back, coming in and joining the chat, and now it's like we're going to end it with a lot of Arnold and Rocky comments. So,
Brandon, that is so awesome, Brandon. I love it. Get to the chopper. Listen, Predator, definitely top 5. Listen, Predator is top 5 best movie of all time. It's a great movie. It is a great movie.
Can I just say I really like Taryn's idea of only cutting up the Buffalo game when we try to trade Jackson Carmen.
Yeah,
maybe we can get
right, that is
CGI.
Good.
We can get some CGI.
Taryn for GM. Taryn for GM.
Put Bills in different uniforms. Just cut it up. That'll be great.
Listen, she also
get a
has
second-round pick for him.
The best line from any Rocky movie. I will break you from Drago. Perfect way to end it. All right, guys. That's another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, if you guys like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. As always, follow Mon on Twitter at @TheFireMon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow Justin on Twitter at Justin L. Wells. Follow the Cincinnati Podcast Network at Cincinnati Pod. And as always, make sure you follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. The same without the ad on Instagram, Bengals_Pulse9. Justin, thank you so much, as always, my man, for joining us. We appreciate it. Thanks for bringing so much great insight on all these prospects, as always. Guys, we will not be back until a week from Monday. Is that correct, Eric?
Taking a week off.
Next Monday, next Wednesday, we'll be live one of those nights. So,
all right, perfect. All right, he is Mon. He is Justin. That is Eric. I am Jake. Thank you guys so much. 560 people. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Keep on checking us out. We'll keep bringing you that Bengal content. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will see you soon.